going to first start, before I read, with Machiavelli's Advice for Nice Guys. Actually, when I was reading this, I said, oh my god, this is just a modern day version of Machiavelli the Prince, which that along with Colin Turnbull's The Lonely African, I would say were the two most influential books that I read when I was in high school, around 16 years old or something. And you know, everybody's take on Machiavelli, this is more in line with what I read it as. You know, he didn't necessarily agree with the type of behavior, but you know, it was what it was, and if you wanted to survive, this is how you better act. And that's basically what Washington is today. Actually, I'm going to read, this is from the Prince. I reordered the Prince. Oh God, it's been about 40 years since I read it. So, but you see, it once again, it's the same paradigm. And we see the same paradigm in Berlin. You see it everywhere, and repeated and repeated and repeated throughout history. And it's really not a functional one. One of the differences between Machiavelli's time, which he, let's see, well, he was the late 1400s, early 1500s. Not sure exactly when he passed. But anyway, you know, it just repeats itself. This was going on in England at the same time. It was going on throughout Europe. And this is kind of why the Puritans, the Protestants, and you know, that gets into all sorts of different facts. And you have Calvinism, you have Quakerism, but basically all of those were in backlash to, because like the Church of England, okay, that was kind of, he wanted the divorce, and that's how it started. But that also was a backlash, and there was a backlash to the Roman Catholic Church that had so much power, and there was a power struggle between the monarchs and the Roman Catholic Church. So even you had a backlash there from the Roman Catholic Church, which then got into a backlash of the Puritans, the Quakers, the Calvinists, you know, all of the Protestant movements. And that's why they fled. And they came to the New World, where they would have freedom of religion and freedom to worship as they wanted, which is, you know, basically also freedom of speech, freedom of ideas. It all kind of comes in together. And that's why the secular human rights movement is just basically a reproduction in terms of ideology and rhetoric of the religious human rights movements under Jesus Christ and Muhammad. So this is from the Prince. It's in the introduction section. Machiavelli, in his History of Florence, gives us a picture of the young men among whom his youth was passed. He writes, they were freer than their forefathers in dress and living, and spent more in other kinds of excesses, consuming their time and money in idleness, gaming, and women. Their chief aim was to appear well-dressed and to speak with wit and acuteness, whilst he who could wound others the most cleverly was thought the wisest. Now, this is just rampant. I'll get into that when I finish this. But in a letter to his son Guido, Machiavelli shows why youth should avail itself of its opportunities for study, and leads us to infer that his own youth had been so occupied. He writes, I have received your letter, which has given me the greatest pleasure, especially because you tell me you are quite restored in health, that which I could have no better news. For if God grant life to you and to me, I hope to make a good man of you if you are willing to do your share. Then, writing of a new patron, he continues, this will turn out well for you, but isn't necessary for you to study. Since then, you have no longer the excuse of illness. Take pains to study letters and music, for you see what honor it done to me for little skills I have. Therefore, my son, if you wish to please me and to bring success and honor to yourself, do write and study, because others will help you if you help yourself. The second period of Machiavelli's life was spent in the service of the Free Republic of Florence, which flourished, as stated above, from the expulsion of the Medicis in 1494 until their return in 1512. Now, this was during the Borgia. Now, the Borgia another time, but I mean, one of the things that I, appreciate with the Medicis and agree with the Medicis and their contribution to history was they did, show that the money lenders were not, they didn't have to be predatory, and the banking system, you needed a banking system, and you needed a banking system that was for the people and honest. There's a good series on Netflix about the Medicis. There's also one about Borgia. I mean, that's one of the things, all of you people at home with your kids, oh my goodness, they're excellent, excellent documentaries and history, series and stuff like that. One of the most boring things about history is all you do is sit there and memorize dates of who invaded who, what war, and who got their head chopped off by who. So it really, I think our history classes need to liven up a bit. And this is a perfect opportunity. The kids are home. They'll enjoy the series and the movies. But also it's a learning experience. There's some actually wonderful documentaries out there. After serving 4 years in one of the public offices, he was appointed Chancellor and Secretary to the Second Chancery of the 10 of Liberty and Peace. Give him a long title. Here we are on firm ground with dealing with the events of Machiavelli's life, for which this time he took a leading part in the affairs of the Republic, and we have its decrees, records, and dispatches to guide us, as well as his own writing. A mere recapitulation of a few of his transactions with the statesmen and soldiers of his time give us a fair indication of his activities and supplies the sources from which he drew the experiences and characters which illustrate the prince. Okay, so that. So this gives a background. But what was interesting here, they were freer than their forefathers in dress and living. Well, we're doing that again, and spent more in other kinds of excesses, consuming their time and money in idleness, gaming, and women. Their chief aim was to appear well dressed and to speak with wit and acuteness, whilst he who could wound others the most cleverly was thought the wisest. So this is exactly the same paradigm that's going on everywhere. With the narcissism epidemic, it started in the United States in the 80s. And as I said in my presentation about the narcissism epidemic, I just watched it being exported everywhere I went. I was like, are you people following me? I'm trying to get away from all of this, and you just keep on following me. So let me play this. This is very good.
Machiavelli was a 16th century Florentine political thinker with powerful advice for nice people who don't get very far. His thought pivots around a central, uncomfortable observation that the wicked tend to win, and they do so because they have a huge advantage over the good, They are willing to act with the darkest ingenuity and cunning to further their cause. They are not held back by those rigid opponents of change, principles. They will be prepared to outright lie, twist facts, threaten or get violent. They will also, when the situation demands it, know how to seductively deceive, use charm and honeyed words, bedazzle and distract. And in this way, they conquer the world. It's routinely assumed that a large part of what it means to be a good person is that one acts well. One doesn't only have good ends, one is committed to good means. So, if one wants a more serious world, one needs to win people over through serious argument, not clickbait. If one wants a fairer world, one has to judiciously and gently try to persuade the agents of injustice to surrender willingly, not through intimidation. And if one wants people to be kind, one must show kindness to one's enemies, not ruthlessness. It sounds splendid, but Machiavelli couldn't overlook an incontrovertible problem. It doesn't work. As he looked back over the history of Florence and the Italian states more generally, he observed that nice princes, statesmen and merchants always come unstuck. That's why he wrote the book for which we know him today, The Prince, a short, dazzling manual of advice for well-disposed princes on how not to finish last. And the answer, in short, was to be nice as one wished, but never to be overly devoted to acting nicely, and indeed to know how to borrow, when need be, every single trick employed by the most cynical, dastardly, unscrupulous, and nastiest people who have ever lived. Machiavelli knew where our counterproductive obsession with acting nicely originated. The West was brought up on the Christian story of Jesus of Nazareth, the very nice man from Galilee who always treated people well and wound up as the King of Kings and the ruler of eternity. But Machiavelli pointed out one inconvenient detail to this sentimental tale of the triumph of goodness through meekness. From a practical perspective, Jesus' life was an outright disaster. This gentle soul was trampled upon and humiliated, disregarded and mocked. Judged in his lifetime and outside of any divine assistance, he was one of history's greatest losers. The clue to being effective lies in overcoming all vestiges of this story. The Prince was not, as is often thought, a guide to being a tyrant. It's a guide about what nice people should learn from tyrants. It's a book about how to be effective, not just good. It's a book haunted by examples of the impotence of the pure. The admirable prince, and today we might add CEO, political activist or thinker, should learn every lesson from the slickest, most devious operators around. They should know how to scare and intimidate, cajole and bully, entrap and beguile. The good politician needs to learn from the bad one, the earnest entrepreneur from the slick one. We are all ultimately the sum of what we achieve, not what we intend. If we care about wisdom, kindness, seriousness and virtue, but only ever act wisely, kindly, seriously and virtuously, we will, Machiavelli warns us, get nowhere. We need to learn lessons from an unexpected source, those we temperamentally most despise. They have the most to teach us about how to bring about the reality we yearn for, but that they are fighting against. We need weapons of similar grade steel to theirs. Ultimately, we should care more about being effective than about being nobly intentioned. It's not enough to dream well. The true measure is what we achieve. The purpose is to change the world for the better, not reside in the quiet comforts of good intentions and a warm heart. All this Machiavelli knew. He disturbs us for good reason, because he probes us where we are at our most self-serving. We tell ourselves we didn't get there because we're a little too pure, good and kind. Machiavelli bracingly informs us we are stuck because we have been too short-sighted to learn from those who really know, our enemies.
Okay. I mean, he how shall I say it? It's like, well, this is the game. Here's how you gotta play to win. And I agree with him. I mean, I learned this. I was brought up in this entire world. Oh, my Lord. I mean, was I brought up to to play the game. I mean, you know, more as the socialite woman, and you know, my mother was always, you know, the arts, and I appreciate that. I mean, you know, that is part of being a well-rounded and Renaissance or an educated person, is having knowledge of literature and music and you know, the great artworks. I mean, you know, I've been through the museums of London, Paris, Madrid. One of my favorite stories is when the Prado, by the end of the time, after I guess we've been living there, when we went back 2003, by 2006 or something, I'm like, look, if you guys go to the Prado, or where Franco is buried, Los Caídos, I forget. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going anymore. I've been there too many times. Because, for example, anytime that my kids would have a friend coming to visit them from Colombia, usually it would be, that I would take the boys to the Prado, and I would always say, you tell your mother that I took you to the Prado to see the Prado. And of course, you know, young boys, 11, 12 years old, you say museum, and so I always had a deal, because right across the street from the Prado, there was a Planet Hollywood. And so, and you know, this is Madrid, so Planet Hollywood and a hamburger is a special treat and an occasion. And so I would say, okay, if you don't moan and groan and you come in and you know, look at this stuff, we're not going to stay there too long, because this is another thing. You don't want to inundate. I mean, my mother could spend so many hours in a museum, and we'd be like, just, okay, can we go? So you want to expose them to all of these things, but you don't want to, you know, force feed it. So I'd tell them, I'd say, okay. And then there was always the one that I would take them to El Bosco, which is the Flemish painter. I forget what his name is in Flemish, but in Spanish it's El Bosco. And he did the Garden de las Delicias, and I mean, there's a whole room of his stuff. And when I first saw his work, when I first went to the Prado, I was like, wow, I didn't know they had LSD back in the 1500s. Because it reminds me of Dali's work. It really reminds me a lot of Dali's work. And I was like, whoa, what was this guy on? And so it's very, if anybody knows the La Jardín de las Delicias, it's look it up, and it is reminds me of Dali. But then that is the kind of the Garden of Eden, if you will. Then the other side of the room, there's other stuff of his. And then the opposite side of the room, there's the same type of huge painting, but it's all with skeletons and war and very macabre and in, you know, black and white and grays and everything. And whenever the boys would get to that one, they were like, oh, cool. And I would like, see, museums are not always boring. But this is another thing. You have to, you know, point out the things and make it interesting for the kids. Because there is this, my ex would reinforce that. I mean, his family, you know, anything cultural. I don't think I've ever seen any of them read a book. Except his brother, quien ha llevado mi queso, who took my cheese or something like that. I was like, oh God. But it is important, the arts and cuisine and culinary traditions, and not just the fine dining. I mean, my God, I got so tired of that long ago. I mean, I prefer what I call a chiringuito de la playa, the small little out of the way places where the local goes. I mean, in Spain and Portugal, in the southern Europe, you can still find those places. And I mean, and the food, it's traditional, regional food, which is delicious. I mean, Spain, I have to say all of Southern Europe, even France. I mean, just, the culinary traditions are fabulous. And I'm not talking about the nouvelle cuisine of the French. They did the same thing as the Americans. I'm talking about the traditional and the fresh, fresh fruit and fresh vegetables and fresh fish and the pig just killed. If you go to a pueblo where they just killed the pig, you're going to get morcillo, chorizo, jamón serrano, all over the place. But, these are traditions that have been developed over thousands of years and delicious. So anyway, it is important, culture, as much as academics. As Machiavelli said to his son, study, you need to study. And it is important, but it's important a balance. All of these experts, they're so tunnel vision in all of their little compartments. Of course, nobody can see the big picture. And everybody then also is all about money. So let me start reading from this, then I'll get on into empathy, because, as you see, for example, that's how traditionally societies have been ruled, and we've been living that paradigm for over 4,000 years, starting with the pharaohs and in the Western civilization. But time has shown, the human rights, social sciences of the past, more than 100 years now, have really shown that is not the way to, inspire people to work, whether it be a company, a country, or whatever. And that's exactly why it eventually breaks down, even if you have a benevolent ruler, because it's everybody in the social order who needs to change this paradigm. And that's what the Puritans were about. That's what the Quakers were about. That's what the early colonies were all about. That's why, when the minorities, whether it be the African Americans, the Asians, the Latinos, yes, okay, they did help to build the West, but the original 13 colonies, those were Puritans. I mean, these were not your robber barons. These were not here to exploit people, or they just wanted a better life and to be able to worship as they wanted, and to think as they wanted, and to speak as they wanted. But within, it wasn't anarchy. They had a whole social order that they came, and they wanted to install that new social order, and we really have gotten away from that. Many years ago, one time I was having a conversation with my ex-father-in-law, and I mentioned the Puritan work ethic. What was that? I said, well, that you work because there's an intrinsic value to the work, and you enjoy the work that you do. And he started laughing. Dude, what are you talking about? It doesn't exist. I mean, literally, first of all, he had never even heard of it. And second off, this was an idea so foreign to him that he just couldn't even imagine that anybody would believe that, or anybody would think like that, or anybody would have that dedication to their work. And believe me, there are a lot of people out there like that. My ex was like that as well. It's his entire family, and that's where it's money. That's what motivates people. I mean, I don't know how many times, even with my own family, I'm so angry because they're like, oh, well, I'm working. I'm like, and I'm not. because nobody's paying me for all of the work that all of the research and all of the reading and all of the analysis I've done in the past. Well, now it's getting up to 15 years if you include what I started in Spain. Nobody's paid me, so nobody values it. And that's really the problem. I mean, if somebody had been, paying me money or at an NGO with tons of donations, oh my Lord, I'd have people knocking on my door all over the place to get my global expats up, to see. This is where there is, within the civil codes, I have a huge lawsuit, not only against the IMF. I mean, I was there for 7 years, so my lawsuit would be stronger. That, yeah, I got my foot in the door, but then I never got promoted, rather than just somebody who doesn't even give me an interview. I mean, I still have lawsuits for discrimination there. I mean, and I got entry level, I got middle level, I as I say, all the way up to the president of the World Bank. Oh, we'll see with Ivanka Trump later on. I'm like, yeah, remember, she's the one who with Larry Summers, or no, excuse me, that was somebody else. I forget what it was, but she was on the committee to put David Malpass as president of the World Bank. Maybe they're waking up. I mean, she's the typical stupid blonde she's just a repeat of her father. Bankruptcy building. I mean, my Lord, I've been seeing some of the videos and things that she's been invested in. She's no different than her father. They're cashing in. I mean, it's incredible. This is exactly what the founding fathers feared would get in as the president. And everybody's just like, wow, we hope he goes away, we hope he goes away, we hope he goes away. I mean, really, I remember this was in Madrid right before I left. There was this woman, and totally atheist, or I probably believe atheist rather than agnostic. That was another thing my ex-father-in-law couldn't understand, the difference between agnostic and atheist. He said it's exactly the same thing. I said, no, it's not. One says I don't know, the other says he doesn't exist. I said, you're just as extremist, and how do you know? Who are you? You don't know any more than anybody else does. So anyway, I lost my train of thought. But let me get started on this. But oh, I remember what it was. She was telling me that she was reading a book, and it was one of these new self-help books, so very modern and everything like that. And she said it just keeps on saying, you just say, I want this or I want that, or you just positive thinking, and then it'll come to you. I said, well, that sounds a hell of a lot like praying to me. I was like, you're just giving it a new name. And yes, I mean, I think praying to God is a lot more, has a lot more intelligence than just going, I want it, and it's gonna come. No, it doesn't work like that. As we'll see, Denzel Washington, he did a very good speech I'm gonna play. So now I'm gonna read from the book. Rules to rule by. What remarkable puzzles politics provides. Every day's headlines shock and surprise us. Daily we hear of frauds, chicanery, and double-dealing by corporate executives. New lies, thefts, cruelties, and even murders perpetuated by government leaders. All of them. Don't believe that our government doesn't do it. We cannot help but wonder what flaws of culture, religion, upbringing, or historical circumstance explain the rise of these malevolent despots, greedy Wall Street bankers, and unctuous oil barons. Is it true, as Shakespearean's Cassius said, that the fault lies not in the stars, but in ourselves? Or more particularly, in those who lead us? Most of us are content to believe that, and yet the truth is far different. Too often we accept the accounts of historians, journalists, pundits, and poets without probing beneath the surface to discover deeper truths that point neither to the stars nor to ourselves. The world of politics is dictated by rules. Shorten the term of any ruler foolish enough to govern without submitting to these rules to rule by. So see, it's the same thing. These are the rules. You gotta learn how to play by the rules, and I know how to play by the rules. Actually, I forgot to pull up the thing, so I wanted to end it with it. I know how to play by the rules. I mean, I was taught very, very, very well, and I rejected it. It leads nowhere. It destroys the person